I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Tip me over and pour me out.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. This is going to be an amazing show. So we have really important stories. We have stories of injustice, but we also have stories of, ladies and gentlemen, we got them. So, you know, a little bit on Rudy Giuliani. It turns out Madison Cawthorn was right. There's apparently orgies going on in Washington among Republicans. It's a cray-cray show. It's a cray-cray special before Christmas. It's a cray-miss.
Is it possibly a cray-cray souffle?
Okay, no, that's something else. But I think Christmas is a new thing that just got born, okay? So
I don't know about that.
Go internet. Okay, anyways. All right, but of course, since the important stories are first, we start unfortunately with a little bit of tragedy. But later, by the way, this is also a serious story, but Christmas getting canceled, but in a sad kind of way. All right, anyways, Anna, go ahead.
Well, we begin today's show with some updates on the war in Gaza. In fact, I'm happy to report that the Washington Post has stayed on the story regarding the bombardment and the raid on al-Shifa hospital. And I think it's important to get into that investigation and what they managed to find. So let's get to it. The brutal war in Palestine rages on, with at least 20,000 Palestinians killed by the IDF. Now, Israel's attacks on medical infrastructure has unfortunately and tragically left northern Gaza with no functional hospitals left. The most infamous of the IDF sieges was the assault on the al-Shifa hospital, which the IDF had stated was being used as a command center by Hamas. But according to a new Washington Post investigation, the IDF's so-called evidence of that claim falls short of showing that Hamas has been using the hospital as a command and control center. So they break down all of the allegations one by one, and based on the open source information and evidence that is available and that they analyzed, they believe that the evidence is not proven at all. So let's get to the first claim or first assertion made by the IDF. So there were several assertions, including that 5 of the hospital buildings were directly involved in Hamas activities. The buildings sat atop underground tunnels that were used by militants to direct rocket attacks and command fighters. The tunnels could be accessed from inside hospital wards. So here is what the Washington Post has found through their analysis and investigation. The rooms connected to the tunnel network discovered by IDF troops showed no immediate evidence of military use by Hamas. They also found that none of the 5 hospital buildings identified by Hagari appeared to be connected to the tunnel network. And finally, there is no evidence that the tunnels could be accessed from inside hospital wards. Now, Cenk, real quick, I remember covering this story with you, and the last time we had talked about it on the show, you had mentioned the discovery of an entrance to the tunnel, but the tunnel or that entrance was not, in fact, found within the hospital. Where was it located exactly?
So I remember a reporter from one of our cable news outlets pointing in a street, hey, we're in a street nearby, and the hospital's over there. And I'm like, so wait, it's not under the hospital. And now you see from the Washington Post drawings that this is a huge complex with many buildings, and the tunnels are a tiny, tiny portion of it, and does not connect to the 5 buildings, as you just pointed out, Anna, that Israel says that it connects to. So they were totally and utterly wrong.
And look, there was so much condemnation toward the IDF following, the raid of the hospital, that if they really had sufficient evidence, they wouldn't hesitate to provide it. But as we know, the evidence that they managed to show us felt far short of what a command center for Hamas would look like. In fact, Washington Post also addressed the weapons that were shown as part of the evidence, saying that photos released by the IDF purported to show the full haul of weapons recovered at the hospital, about 12 AK-style rifles, in addition to magazines of ammunition and several grenades and bulletproof vests. But what the Washington Post notes is, while you see Hagari showing that weaponry, the Post was unable to independently verify to whom the weapons belonged or how they came to be inside the radiology unit of al-Shifa hospital. I'll also note one other thing. Even if there is subsequently some evidence indicating that the weaponry shown what did in fact belong to Hamas, again, it definitely falls short of providing sufficient evidence of a Hamas command center. So do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, so look, guys, I thought the tunnels were more expansive than it turns out they are. And I thought they were all under Gaza, but thanks to the IDF, we've seen some of the places that they're in. It's a little bit more limited than I imagined. And it turns out, Ehud Barak admitted that Israel built the tunnels, which was a hell of a twist. And the IDF has shown that most of the tunnels are completely unaffected by the bombing. So they're hitting these hospitals and causing grave damage. So as they were coming up to the hospital, 4 babies died and 40 people died overall because of the siege, and they found nothing. So we just explained it to you guys, but it bears repeating. Number one, the weapons that they claimed that they found there, it was tiny to begin with. We showed you the IDF video. It was like a flak jacket, a pair of boots, and like 2 guns. And now the Washington Post says, we have no idea where that came from, just like we told you. They could have just put it there, right? And so they haven't been able to prove that it's Hamas's at all. So, and it's besides which, if it was a command center, I mean, you only have 2 guns and a flak jacket in a command center, it's absurd, totally absurd, right? And then they had the 2 people that had entered the hospital, the 2 hostages that they showed from originally right after the attacks. Well, as we told you guys, it looks like they're bringing them in to get treatment because one of them had blood all over their body. That doesn't show that it's a command center. That shows that they took the hostages to get treated to make sure they didn't die. And so everything that Israel said, oh, definitely these 5 buildings, or they got the underground tunnel and it's a command center, every one of those claims was proven to be a complete lie. The IDF lies like this all the time, and it's strategic. I need you to understand this, because as long as they get the press to repeat it for a couple of weeks, by the time the Washington Post writes the story, nobody's gonna see it large enough. They already think, oh yeah, whoever they want to think it already is thinking that it's a command center. They're never gonna see this story. And that was in the press 10,000 times more than this story is. And that's how propaganda works. You put it out there no matter how much it's untrue, and hope that people don't find out that it was corrected.
So Cenk, I know that the way that you're describing the weapons found is just meant to emphasize the ridiculousness of pointing to that as the evidence of a Hamas command center. But I just want to make sure that we're as precise and accurate as possible, even if we're just trying to emphasize the ridiculousness of the evidence. They found more than 2 guns. They found 12 AK style rifles. But again, even if it is somehow in the future proven to be weaponry that belongs to Hamas, it falls short of proving that this was a Hamas command center that would allow for the IDF to engage in the military activity they engaged in at this hospital without breaking international war crimes or international laws pertaining to war crimes. Now, there's more. I want to just quickly talk about the reaction to the evidence provided by Israel, because Biden continues to provide cover. He had noted, quote, "We are absolutely confident in the intelligence that Hamas was using it as a command and control node. Hamas has been holding the hostages in the hospital compound until shortly before Israel went in." Well, I'm curious what that intelligence is. Is he just taking what the IDF is saying at face value? And I think that considering that the United States government typically does provide cover and supports Israel no matter what, I think Biden has no choice in his mind but to pretend as though the intelligence is there. But according to now a third party investigative reporting by the Washington Post, the evidence is not there, the intelligence is not there. And had it been there, you know that the international community would have seen it by now, because the IDF doesn't want to deal with the condemnation it had been dealing with. But I think what's also incredibly important is to hear from a coward, an anonymous member of Congress who didn't have the courage to reveal his or her name when making this statement. But this individual spoke to the Washington Post and said, quote, before I was convinced that al-Shifa was where these operations were taking place, meaning the Hamas command center. I think there has to be a new level of demonstration. They should have more proof at this point. But it gives you a sense of, I think that this member of Congress who refuses to reveal his or her identity gives you a sense of how afraid our elected lawmakers are in speaking out against the military operations and the aerial bombardments that are currently being conducted by the IDF. So,
yeah. Guys, beware of propaganda no matter where it comes from. Hamas, Israel, the US, wherever it's coming from. And look, this time around, American media has been doing a better job of actually checking Israeli propaganda and finding out, oh, it turns out it's totally not true. And every time that propaganda has been investigated from IDF on, and it's always in connection with war crimes. They commit a war crime, and then they go, oh yeah, we had to do, Hamas made us do it. Oh, they had a giant command center, conducted the whole war, defy buildings. No, none of it is true. None of it is true. So thank you to the American media for waking up and doing some good journalism. We appreciate it.
And one final thing that I'll bring up, because I do think it's important to let people know that we're aware of this and we're following the story to see if anything else develops. But a number of medical professionals, doctors, surgeons have been detained by the IDF on the grounds that they are suspected terrorists. One of those individuals was the al-Shifa hospital director. And so Washington Post reports that after arresting the hospital's director, Ahmed al-Khalut, Israel released an interrogation video Tuesday in which he admitted to being a member of Hamas and said the hospital was under the control of the Izzeddin al-Qassam brigades. Yeah, brigades, the group's armed wing. And I saw that story when it broke earlier this week. I chose not to cover it because we're talking about someone who is basically in detention by the IDF. I don't know what the conditions are. Obviously, he's under duress. And I'm happy to report that the Washington Post had a similar take, saying that in response, Gaza's health ministry said the statement was made under the force of oppression, torture, and intimidation to justify Israel's successive crimes, especially against the health system. So I'm not willing to believe what hostages are saying as they're being held captive by Hamas militants. I feel the same way about the IDF, especially following all of these reports showing the brutal nature of their military missions, how they're willing to shoot people who are shirtless, who clearly do not have any weaponry on them or any bomb on them. And of course, I'm talking about the 3 Israeli hostages that the IDF mistakenly shot, which showed the entire world that the IDF is willing to literally shoot anyone, including people holding white flags, people who are shirtless, and in this case, people who are even speaking Hebrew and asking for help.
Yeah, so that doctor's statement, I think, is the equivalent of a hostage video. So you take the guy hostage, a doctor who runs the hospital, and they've taken people, they take Palestinians hostage all the time and call them prisoners. Then the human rights groups go, okay, if they're prisoners, what are the charges against them? And an enormous number, like 80%, have no charges against them. They're just hostages that Israel is taking. And then to release a hostage video and pretend that any of that is true is nonsense. They're absolute ridiculous propaganda. And finally, in northern Gaza, now no hospitals are fully functional, none. And in southern Gaza, only a couple remain. In northern Gaza, 4 out of 5 people have not eaten in days. Starvation has begun. And in southern Gaza, half the people have not eaten in days. So now the government of Israel is starving the Palestinians to death in Gaza. And they have no hospitals to go to in the north and barely any left in the south. And then you're gonna tell us that you've got some great propaganda tape from a hostage video or that siege that you laid on that hospital. And now the reporters all prove it's not true. At some point, when is it going to be enough? When will Israel have punished the innocent civilians of Palestine enough? Not only are there 20,000 dead, there's 52,000 that have been injured, and God knows who's under that rubble. There are huge numbers for a number of people that might be under the rubble as well, and 90% of Gaza is now homeless. You've destroyed the whole place. What else do you want? And it turns out you didn't even affect the tunnels. This is just vengeance and through war crimes and genocide, and some of the worst we have ever seen.
Yeah, and look, Cenk, I think that when you have members of Netanyahu's government going on television and clearly stating what they intend to do, we should believe them. When they say that they want to level Gaza and force Palestinians out of that land into the Sinai desert, we should believe them. Why would they go on television and lie about that? They keep saying it over and over again, and their actions prove that what they're saying is what they intend to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got to be real about the situation.
Along those lines, Anna, Netanyahu has just said he was really proud that he prevented a Palestinian state and that he'll never allow a Palestinian state. So what he's saying is, under no circumstances will he ever do peace. So that means not only will the Palestinians be oppressed and occupied and brutalized, apparently indefinitely, and he has no problem with that because that's the kind of monster Netanyahu is. But on top of that, he's saying to his own Israeli citizens, you're never going to have peace. You're never going to have peace of mind. As long as a warmonger like Netanyahu is in charge, he says he's never going to give the Palestinians a state and you'll be in a permanent state of war. How does that help Israel? No, this is just some of the worst war crimes. And this is also documented by not just human rights groups, but New York Times and other publications now. Some of the worst war crimes we have ever seen in our lifetime. What happened to never again?
When we come back from the break, I just want to share with you that we're not the only ones who are furious with Netanyahu's government and what they're carrying out. There are people who have lost family members, hostages who were killed by IDF members, and they're speaking out and they are rebuking Benjamin Netanyahu. So we've got that story and more coming up. Don't miss it.
All right, back during the break here. Let's go to YouTube Super Chat. Michael Malbon writes in, I drive a meat truck and a couple of grocery stores I delivered to in Brainerd, Minnesota are going on strike at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Some greasy corporate lawyer just released a statement that the workers don't need a raise for where they live. You see that? Labor power spreading, hope spreading, higher wages spreading. Don't lose hope. We fight back, we win. History Speaks writes in, on the hospital, it's important to remember that IDF didn't merely raid the hospital, they sieged it, destroying the solar panels and cutting off patients from power, including babies from incubators, a hideous war crime. Yes, the first day of the siege, 2 babies died because they didn't have power for the incubators. Second day, another 2 babies died. 40 people died overall, the patients, because they lost power. That was just in the siege, let alone all the other patients that have died for what they did to the hospital overall. What part of this is defending yourself? If somebody attacked you from Cleveland, do you have a right to kill babies in a hospital in Cleveland? This is insane. Okay.
So sorry to interrupt, Cenk, but prior to the 40 individuals dying that you just referenced, Washington Post reported that as many as 180 people died prior to that, according to the United Nations.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
It's terrible.
Yeah, Chase Essex wrote in, today justice came, can't wait to read it, Cenk. Love that, thank you guys. You can still get, and in fact, it makes a great Christmas present, New Year's present, in an unbelievable Festivus present. tyt.com/justice. Oh, by the way, and when you get there, autograph copies at Shop TYT. You can get there through tyt.com/justice. And if you click on the Shop TYT one, I have autograph copies there. So check that out. And thank you for being excited about it. We appreciate it. Ouroboros writes in on the YouTube memberships, I'm late. I must leave an offering at the marijuana altar. Yes, if you want to leave an offering, tyt.com/join, where we will take donations and subscriptions. We definitely need it. In fact, here, let me show you the drive that we're doing. We're trying to get to 6,000 new members by the end of the year. It's obviously going to be tough, but we're at around 3,930 now. And we need that so that we can keep going, guys. This is about sustainability. The ad market's off by 40%, and that means we have 40% less money. And that is devastating. So help out if you can, tyt.com/join. We also take contributions there and appreciate it. And next week, by the way, we've got Turks and Jerks on December 28th. Make sure you're checking that out. And you guys actually helped in nominating the Turks and Jerks. So check it out at 8 o'clock Eastern next Thursday. Now I'm going to Twitch. Metal Turtle 571 gifted 10 subs on Twitch, which is amazing. They've gifted 399 overall. Todd Jump 5 wrote in, love you guys, keep up the great work. Right back at you, brother. And I am out of time. We'll see you in a second. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Christopher Haley. Christopher just joined by hitting the join button below. We appreciate it. And now you're part of TYT and you make this possible. Anna.
Well, we're not the only ones who are displeased, to say the least, with Benjamin Netanyahu and the current Israeli government. There are many Israelis who are also incredibly angry with Netanyahu. So let's talk a little bit about that.
What is your message to the government?
You murdered my son twice. You let the Hamas take my son on October 7th, and you killed my son on December 14th. They are not our leaders. They're thinking only on themselves.
That was the father of one of the Israeli hostages who was shot and killed by the IDF. The hostage's name was Alon Shamris. His father, Avi, clearly is furious with Benjamin Netanyahu, the IDF, and the current Israeli government over the fact that they failed to keep Israelis safe on October 7th, and the fact that they failed to get his son home safe after he was kidnapped and held captive by Hamas militants. Now, here's more from this incredibly heartbreaking interview.
He was serving in the army in special forces. Alon is a brave guy.
Avi Shamriz believes his son plotted an escape from Hamas tunnels along with 2 other hostages.
If you see the sign, all is his handwriting.
The sign that says SOS?
Yes,
that's
this is him.
That's his writing?
Yes. The army did not act as an army. They act like murderers. They just shoot to kill.
It's not just grief.
I'm really angry. I asked the government stop the shooting, and look what's happened.
Absolutely heartbreaking. And obviously, he's not the only one, Cenk, who's going through this, because there were 3 Israeli hostages who were shot and killed by the IDF, including Samir Halaka, who unfortunately was, according to the IDF, mistaken as a threat and also killed. Here is the mother of the Israeli hostage. Let's hear from her.
And at Summer's family home, his mother, Layla, welcomes visitors. Including an Israeli politician. We can only ask for your forgiveness, he says. Layla says they're all 3 heroes. They went out, escaped, they did all the work, just waiting for you to come get them. She tells him, I will not forgive anyone. You did not accept his condolences. Why? Because these words came late, she says. Later, describing how she keeps playing in her head her son's final moments. Their call for help, the white flag, this is what I keep seeing, she tells us. I am hurting.
I can't imagine what they're going through. And I can't imagine what the family members of the remaining hostages in the Gaza Strip are currently going through as the aerial bombardments continue, as you see artillery fire, you see the civilian death toll go up day after day. It's heartbreaking, and keep in mind, there are still around 130 hostages in Gaza, assuming that everyone is still alive. Cenk.
So first of all, this is why we tell you all the time, do not make assumptions about civilians. Oh, the Israelis think this, the Palestinians think that. No, first of all, we're all human beings. And yes, we get affected by the situation we're in, the tribes we're in, and the conflicts between them. But we're all human, we're the same. And in Israel, there are a lot of protests of Netanyahu and a lot of dissent. And so I don't think they're a democracy because they occupy 5 million Palestinians and don't give them rights. But within Israel, there is real dissent. There is real voting. There is a real judiciary and actually an excellent press. So keep Avi Shamriz in mind. You hear what he said? It wasn't just about his son. He said, this is not how you act as an army. He said, this is the actions of murderers. Now he's saying that about his own government. Now, of course, his son was killed by that same government, and obviously he's upset and he says it. But he's not just sticking up for the hostages, but for the Palestinians. So what kind of an army operates like this, where you just shoot without asking any questions, without knowing who they are? And in this case, they happen to be Israelis. Now, how many cases do you think they were Palestinians and it got no coverage at all? And there's 20,000 dead in Gaza. We know over 8,000 are children. We know over 6,400 are women. But how many men did they kill and go, yeah, they were probably Hamas? And they didn't even bother checking. That's why this is a huge news story, because they killed 3 Israelis. To what degree is it standard operating procedure for them to shoot first and maybe ask questions later, and oftentimes never ask questions, never find out who they killed? My guess is the answer is a lot of times. And by the way, where do we get that information? Oftentimes, former IDF, former intelligence officers in Israel. It's a great write-up in an Israeli publication today. A former intelligence officer saying they're now using AI to do bombings so that they've increased the targets. but they're not necessarily connected to Hamas. And they'll see a residential building and they'll just say that's a power target with no connection to Hamas, and they'll bomb it. And he called it a mass assassination factory. And that's a former Israeli intelligence officer.
Cenk, I want to go back. I totally agree with you, but I want to go back to what you said a little earlier about, don't make the mistake of generalizing about any group of people, and that includes Israelis, right? I think because of the horrific videos and images that we see coming out of Gaza, I personally haven't done a good enough job in kind of talking about the reality on the ground in Israel, because while I do believe that the majority of Israelis are supportive of the military effort in Gaza, and that's according to public opinion polling, there are so many wonderful people in Israel who have spoken out against what the IDF is doing, and they're really putting a lot on the line. I mean, the possibility of losing friends and family over their protests over what the government and the IDF is doing. And so when I hear rhetoric like, oh, all Israelis are settler colonialists, including the babies, and they're all evil. No, I reject that language through and through. That's hateful rhetoric. They would find it incredibly hateful if they heard from people drawing these broad generalizations about Palestinians, referring to them all as Hamas, as some Israeli politicians have, and it's deplorable and disgusting. But I feel the same way about Israelis, and I actually want to highlight a young Israeli, a young man, he's an 18-year-old who has decided to really take a stand. And even though he's been drafted into the IDF, he is willing to lose quite a bit in refusing to be drafted. And so he had an interview with Novara Media today, and I really appreciated this conversation. I want to give him a lot of credit. His name is Tal Mitnick. He's a wonderful guy, and so is his family, who's supportive of his decision here. Let's hear what he had to say.
What led you to the decision to refuse national service?
What led me was the realization that it's not just a couple soldiers that are bad soldiers or that enact violent occupation on Palestinians, but it's actually a whole system of violence, of pulling people into the army and making them work for the occupation and for oppressing Palestinians.
So what's actually going to happen on your enlistment date? Can you talk me through it?
My enlistment date is next week on Tuesday, and I will come and declare that I'm not serving. And then I will go up on trial in front of a military judge, which is usually a general. And he will sentence me to time in military jail, prison.
I mean, so much love and solidarity to him. I mean, that is not an easy decision to make, but this is a decision he's making because he feels that it's in his conscience to avoid serving in the IDF. He doesn't agree with their military practices.
Yeah, the last couple of things here. The whole point of Israel is to be a safe haven. And as long as we never get to peace, we're never going to get to have a safe haven in Israel. And so people like Netanyahu are not representing Israel's interests. They're representing their own interests, just like that father Avi Shamriz explained. And so it's incumbent upon the Israelis to change course here, and they're almost there. So yes, the majority still support the war in Gaza, and that's very unfortunate. But there are also giant protests against Netanyahu. And there were giant protests around the hostages being killed. People are very angry about that. And the polling also shows that they definitely want to get rid of Netanyahu. But they've got to do it now. How many more Palestinians have to die? And Netanyahu says he's going to stay until the war is over. Well, that gives him an incentive to never end the war. And he says, oh, until we kill everyone in Hamas. Well, they claim they've killed 20% of Hamas. It's an outlandish claim. But even if you were to take that as true, well, Jesus, you killed 20,000 civilians while you were killing 20% of Hamas. How many more civilians are going to kill? So no, in a parliamentary system, elections can be called in non-regular times. Israel has to change course and has to change leadership. They're capable of it, and you see wonderful Israeli citizens speaking out and fighting back. But we've got to get it over the hump until a majority say, no, we have to do peace and not endless war.
Finally, Fox News might want to pay a little bit of attention to this because we finally have a real example of Christmas getting canceled.
Christmas celebrations are canceled this year, for it's impossible to celebrate Christmas when our people in Gaza are going through a genocide. Usually it's Jesus in the manger surrounded by the shepherds, surrounded by the Holy Family, Joseph and Mary, and the Magi's who came from the east. Here we wanted to say that it's as if they are looking for Jesus in the midst of the rubble. We wanted to send a message to the world.
Christmas celebrations have in fact been canceled in Bethlehem, which is considered the birthplace of Jesus Christ and is located in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Last month, Palestinian leaders of Christian denominations came together and, citing the devastating war in Gaza, made a unanimous decision to cancel the public celebrations. As NPR reports, there's no Christmas tree or sparkling lights in Manger Square or along the cobblestone streets that should be bustling with foreign tourists this time of year. There will be no Christmas parade with musicians weaving through the old city's labyrinth walkways, no Santas on the street corners doling out joy to children. Instead, the main square is a simple parking lot without a hint of holiday decoration to be seen. Why don't we hear a little more from the Lutheran pastor in the video that we watched earlier? His name is Munter Isaac. Let's watch.
While the whole world is celebrating Christmas in festive ways, here in Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus, where Christmas originated from, this is what Christmas looks like to us. Christmas is the solidarity of God with those who are oppressed, with those who are suffering. And if Jesus is to be born again this year, he will be born in Gaza, under the rubble, in solidarity with the people of Gaza. Our hope is in our faith. Our hope is in our resilience. So while Christmas celebrations are canceled, Christmas prayers are not canceled. And maybe when we look at the image of Jesus under the rubble, we see a light of hope and life coming out of destruction.
So you get a sense of what Bethlehem looks like at the moment. And I think they made the right decision given the just pain and suffering, the death, the destruction that Palestinians are facing in the Gaza Strip. And honestly, the violence that many Palestinians have been facing, not just in this war, but for many, many years in the West Bank, which is not governed by Hamas, it's governed by the Palestinian Authority. But real quick, Cenk, before I go to you, I want to show everyone what the Christmas celebrations in Bethlehem typically look like.
Bethlehem hosts one of the most important Christmas celebrations worldwide. Every year, the city is lit up with thousands of lamps and decorated with one of the biggest Christmas trees in the Holy Land. Since the war between Israel and Hamas broke out on October 7, the churches in Bethlehem host only local believers. Tourists and pilgrims have fled, affecting the city's economy, which relies on its visitors.
What has also made it incredibly difficult for tourists who want to go to Bethlehem is that Israel, following the attacks on October 7th, has implemented new and more checkpoints that make it difficult for people to get in and out of the West Bank. Cenk.
Okay, so first of all, the Holy Family Church in Gaza is the only Catholic church. So Bethlehem's in the West Bank, but Holy Family Church is in Gaza, and so they're under fire as we speak. And two Israeli snipers seem to have killed 2 women that were coming out of that church. The Pope said that it was definitely the Israelis, and that it was an act of terrorism. And so these churches are in real danger, as everyone in Gaza is in incredible danger. And some of the churches have been bombed, Catholic or Protestant, and so I think that image of baby Jesus in the rubble is very powerful. And the pastor said in another account that I read, he didn't know why that picture in particular resonated so much and why the whole world's talking about it. And he said, why don't they care more about the actual babies in the rubble? And the reality is, whether it's right or wrong, human beings tend to empathize and relate to people that look like them or are like them or share an identity in one way or another. So for a lot of Christians, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, like if they were, a lot of them don't even see it because a lot of our media doesn't show it. But if you showed them a baby under the rubble, their hearts would break. But when you hear the propaganda about, oh, Israel's right to defend itself, well, and you see the 36 kids that were killed in Israel, and everyone has seen the horrors that happened on October 7th when Hamas attacked Israel. That's 36 kids. On the Palestinian side, now over 8,000 kids have been killed. 8,000. So the 36 killed in Israel, everyone agrees is terrorism. But the 8,000 kids killed in Gaza is not terrorism? Of course it is. This is indiscriminate. And they drop gigantic bombs, unguided bombs. And then the snipers killing women coming out of churches, their own hostages, 3 Israeli hostages killed because they're not asking questions. The guys were shirtless, they were waving a white flag and they killed them anyway. So, but when Christians see a nativity scene that they are used to, that they connect to, that they relate to, then they go, oh my God, wow, that's powerful. So thank you to that pastor, because that was an amazing way of showing what the problem is. And remember, Palestinians are not all Muslim. There's a significant Palestinian Christian community. Leftover, some trace their lineage all the way back to the Crusaders, and some are there to tend to the churches that are there in Bethlehem, obviously. So, and I love to see the best of the religions. Unfortunately, we often see the worst, but when you see a religious leader actually fighting for morality and fighting for what Jesus preached when, the Jesus of the New Testament, it's beautiful to see. And so we appreciate him when we thank him. And look, these goofballs here in America on Fox News, they do this thing where they pretend there's a war on Christmas because somebody said happy holidays instead of Merry Christmas. Or there's a black Santa. I don't know why that's a war on Christmas, but they hate it and they hype that stuff up. This is an actual war on Christmas, a literal one. So who did it? Well, it turns out it was Benjamin Netanyahu. And so now they've had to cancel Christmas in Bethlehem. And I think that the pastor's right, the actual lives lost should matter so much more. But I am happy that this has captured a lot of Christians' attention, including in America, and has begun to get their attention to the actual deaths there and to relate to that and to please help in trying to stop it so that we don't have more kids buried under the rubble.
All right, well, it's been a heavy show so far, but when we come back from the break, I want a little bit of relief. So we're going to do, I guess, a lighter story, although it does involve elected officials, Epstein, and his little black book, and who he basically had at the Lolita Express. So a lot of admissions here by an elected member of Congress who's on his way out. So we'll get to that and more, don't miss it.
Okay, let's go to our members on tyt.com. So number one, Ruminari writes in, greetings, still reading Cenk's book. Sections are very relevant to current issues and has helped me to make sense out of the pitiful truth about politics today. Thank you for saying that, I appreciate it. Everybody can get it at tyt.com/justice. And when you're there, you'll have a whole bunch of options from where to buy it. And at Shop TYT now, there's autograph copies back. So makes for a good Christmas present or whatever else, whatever other gift you want to get for yourself or for others, tyt.com/justice, appreciate it. Teddy Cool says, Anna looking great as always. Lou B says, what do you mean? It's always an amazing show.
Amazing.
Because I said today's was going to be amazing. Appreciate you guys. Mechanic 66 says, I can't hear cray cray without thinking souffle. That's now afflicted all of us. And then funny enough, cray cray souffle writes in and says, your shout outs are making me feel so warm and fuzzy, not to mention a little cray cray. Thanks, Cenk and Anna.
Amazing.
That's fun for everybody. Michael Napin writes in, happy holidays to Anna, great hair today. And Cenk, all of the TYT staff. Yes, Cenk, your hair is great too.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Look at Shy Coltrane 42 saying, Cenk's looking very distinguished. I like it. Oh, thank you. All right, more serious stuff now. Opinionated says AK-47s are the most common weapon in Europe and the Middle East. They are sold openly by the Russians and have been for decades. Would not surprise me to find out that the IDF planted all that evidence. Tattered Remnant says 12 rifles. That's a small fraction of the average right-wing gun nut's arsenal. It's a point I made about Lauren Boebert's Christmas card. Almost had more AK-47s than al-Shifa Hospital. And that one we actually know is true as opposed to what happened in al-Shifa Hospital. Okay. So Lost Mama over 8 writes in, love you TYT, you're all amazing truth tellers. Did you hear the American Christians are mad at the Pope again? How dare he act like Jesus and love his neighbors and spread kindness around like that? Yeah, the people who believe in end times think, no, this is great. We love this death and destruction. Hopefully Armageddon's coming soon where more than 7 billion people will be massacred. So are they upset that the Pope is for peace? Of course. Man, wait till they get a load of Jesus. They're gonna hate that guy. Laughing Buddha Astronaut says, how does one increase membership level? Well, thank you for asking. tyt.com/upgrade on our website, tyt.com/upgrade. And we really could use it and it makes a huge difference. Thank you. Cenk's Left Tricep for Fury writes in, even though they lost someone, the families are still more lucid and understand the IDF abomination for what it is. My heart breaks for them. Exactly right. Cherche de la Gnosis writes in, Cenk, as I'm starting to realize, everything I learned in religious school was BS. They never taught us that never again was only applicable to Jews. Even though I gave up the Jewish religion decades ago, Netanyahu and Israel's behavior over that time and the current horrific action has made me now give up on the culture. Now don't give up on the culture, okay? Those are two separate things. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, but also Faisal Ahmed, Razwan, Caitlin Landrum. They all just became Young Turks members and allow us to do this show. Guys, if you're a member and you see something we're saying that you like, you did that. Thank you. And they did it by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. And Christopher and Weed Eater 72 upgraded through that same join button, and we really appreciate that as well. And finally, Benjamin Morrill gifted a membership on YouTube. Beach Babe 21 gifted 10, and Gabby Mathis gifted 5. Thank you for the Christmas spirit. We appreciate you guys. Keep it going if you can, because we do need it. All right, Anna, what's next?
Well, there are some fascinating disclosures by an outgoing Republican congressman. So let's hear what he has to say.
You're visiting, you're out of the country or out of town, or you're in a motel or a bar in DC, and some whatever you're into, women or men or whatever, comes up and they're very attractive and they're laughing at your jokes and you're buying them a drink. Next thing you know, you're in the motel room with them naked, and next thing you know, you're about to make a key vote, and what happens? Some well-dressed person comes up and whispers in your ear, "Hey man, there's tapes out on you," and then you're like, "Uh-oh," and said, "You really ought not be voting for this thing."
Some pretty big admissions from Republican congressman, outgoing congressman, I should say, Tim Burchett, who our producer, Alyssa Salmons, wants to note seems to have an affinity for wearing the same outfit. Now, he spoke to a conservative podcaster. You might be familiar with him. His name's Benny Johnson. And during that conversation today, he starts talking about blackmail and depravity within Congress. So a little bit of context before we get to more of their exchange. Burchett and Johnson primarily spoke about why it took so long for the client list of notorious sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein to be ordered unsealed by a federal judge. But at one point, Burchett claimed that many good conservatives and other members of Congress are being entrapped and then blackmailed to vote certain ways. Now let's watch more of what he had to say.
Congressman, you represent the state of Tennessee. Marsha Blackburn has been completely blackballed in the Senate for asking for these flight logs to be released and for this client list to be released. It seems like now you are fighting with her in the House. Why the protection mechanism? And more importantly, you mentioned recently in an interview that there may be some members of Congress who are personally compromised by this, and they don't want the truth to get out.
You got powerful people, and they write the big checks. Well, let's be honest. And powerful people in this country, they write the big checks, and they're the ones out on the tarmac when the president comes and visits, and whichever party they're in, they always either out on the tarmac or in the private room. They're the ones that write the big checks. They don't care who's in. They hate this country. They hate what we're about, but they love their portfolios and they love their money more than they do anything else. And they protect it, and they protect the people that do that. And by doing so, the old honeypot, the Russians do that, and I'm sure members of Congress have been caught up. Why in the world would good conservatives vote for crazy stuff like what we've been seeing out of Congress?
Wow. I mean, I wish he would name names. He didn't, obviously, but I mean, I think what he's saying is true. I think, look, the sex scandal stuff, of course, is going to get most of the attention. But to me, Cenk, his admission about members of Congress voting in favor of nonsense because of being blackmailed, that is the interesting part, because it explains some of what's been going on in Congress, according to Burchett, if the allegations are true. And, in this case, it goes beyond simple corruption, which is, I think, the heart of the problem that we have here in this country. But wow, I wonder if we are going to hear anyone name any names.
Yeah, look, there's a lot in there. So let's start with the folks that are naked. So I mean, that was the best part of the tape. Let's not bury the lead here. Let's also acknowledge here, hashtag Madison Cawthorn was right. So I'm actually a bit shocked by that, to be honest with you.
What?
This is like,
don't be shocked by that. You're crazy.
No,
you're crazy. I wasn't shocked by that for even a second. And I knew they were gonna oust him. I knew that the GOP would direct their ire toward him and ensure that he would not get reelected. Why were they so focused on getting him out of Congress? Because he was speaking the truth.
Yeah, I hear you. And apparently that was definitely the case, or at least certainly seems to be the case. So, but like if you said to me, a Republican is caught in a sex scandal, I'd say, so it's Tuesday. Like I'm not surprised by that at all, right? Like the other day there was the two staffers who were having gay sex in one of the Senate rooms. The only shocking part of that story was that they weren't Republicans, right? Like, so every time there's a sex scandal, like at least 9 out of 10 times, there's Republicans doing all the things that they say, it's terrible, etc. But inviting a congressman like Madison Cawthorn was saying to an orgy where a bunch of Republicans are getting together and doing cocaine and then having sex with, I don't know, one another and other women, etc. I couldn't believe it. But now here comes, I think Tim Burchett might be the third person who's mentioned, well, obviously, I mean, you're out there and you get a couple of drinks and next thing you know, you're naked. And then the lobbyists have what, tapes of it? I mean, what in the world is going on in Washington? So
it seems as though he's saying that there is this like honeypot type scheme happening where I mean, look, if that's true, I am wondering what the laws are in DC. Like, for instance, in California, you can't record someone without their knowledge. In fact, if you get caught doing it, you could face some serious charges for it. I don't know if DC has similar laws, but it appears what Burchett is saying here is that there's like this honeypot scheme where, they do somehow have dirt on these individuals, possibly tapes, and they use it to blackmail members of Congress to ensure certain legislation gets voted in. Man, politics is so dirty, Cenk. It's so dirty, and it shows you that when it comes to their own corruption or maintaining their own power, these members of Congress, they know how to fight, and they know how to fight dirty. When it comes to representing the very constituents who put them in those seats to begin with, there's your favorite song. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. And yes, I invented that song. That's the Democratic theme song. There was nothing we could do. There was nothing we could do. There was nothing we could do. That's what they sing after every time the Republicans pass tax cuts for the rich, giant defense budgets, etc. Anyways, but here I'm going to give Republicans a little bit more credit, even though we're talking about Republican sex scandals. And now, like, after Republicans that come out, they're like, oh yeah, obviously, yeah. There's the honeypot, and there's the orgies, and there's the cocaine. Oh, you guys didn't know that? Okay, but the second part and the thing that Anna emphasized in the beginning, give the Republicans credit for talking about the big donors in a way that the Democrats and even progressives in Congress don't. So Mo Brooks, one of the most right-wing members of Congress, one of the early supporters, most ardent supporters of Donald Trump, as he was running for the Senate, he admitted publicly in a fundraiser, yeah, you have to pay about $1 million to get a committee chairmanship, and both parties do it. And he said, what do you think you're going to get the $1 million? You can't get it from the average Jane and Joe. I have this entire portion in my book. You can get it at tyt.com/justice, because his admissions are startling and they're amazing. And he said, so you don't get it from Jane and Joe, you get it from the industry that you're supposed to be regulating in that committee. And every committee chairman is kind of basically bribed that way. So they serve the people they're supposed to be regulating instead of the other way around. And so now Burchett comes out and goes, oh yeah, the big donors control everything. Meanwhile, the Democrats are like, big donors, never heard of them. I don't know what you're talking about. And don't get me wrong, Mitch McConnell and certainly Donald Trump, they're super corrupt and they take part in this. And the Republicans invented corruption. They're the whole point of the party is to serve the rich. So I'm not absolving them of all the things that they have done in regards to that. But as some of them are leaving, they're going, and some that are even there now are beginning to call out the donors going, we're all secretly controlled by the donors. I mean, you never see it in mainstream media. You never see the leaders in the Republican or Democratic Party admit it, but it's super obvious to everyone who's in Washington. Thank you, finally, a little bit of a confession on the most important issue in DC.
So I wanted to just, this is now the second time I'm using PMC language today by saying circle back. I'm going to circle back to the Marsha Blackburn statement that he made there, because it's interesting. He also went on Newsmax earlier, and according to Newsmax, Representative Tim Burchett told Newsmax on Monday that Congress has been compromised in the pursuit to obtain the flight logs of dead pedophile Jeffrey Epstein's infamous Lolita Express, saying that even some of his GOP colleagues are stained by something that's forcing them to keep their mouth shut. And then he says, and this is a direct quote, the trash can is very deep. And Burchett says that he got involved in the effort to get the flight logs turned over when his fellow Tennessee, colleague in the Senate, Marsha Blackburn, got snubbed allegedly by the Senate Judiciary Committee. So the claim is that committee chair Dick Durbin blocked Blackburn's bid at issuing subpoenas for those logs, which could show, the who's who in the list of names that Epstein was partying with, if you will. And so he tells Newsmax, quote, that's why I got involved with it. Blackburn can handle her own. But when the Democrat-controlled Senate did that, I went to Chairman James Comer in the Republican-controlled House, and I said, we need to fix this. This is wrong. And too many of my colleagues, he says, I'm afraid, are compromised in this area. For whatever reason, somebody's whispered in their ear and said, hey, you don't want something to come out on something else. You better keep your mouth shut on this. And that's exactly what they've done. And so Burchett explained to Betty Johnson that this is what led the blackmail, or led to the blackmail allegations, basically saying that everyone knows everything in DC, everyone has dirt on everyone, and that blackmail is apparently, part of the game. So let's watch the final video on that.
No man or no woman actually is an island, and they know what to get at. If it's women, drugs, booze, it'll find you in DC and in most elected offices. And that's what people of power and influence do. And it's just, I've been in this game my whole life. I spent 16 years in the state legislature in Tennessee and 8 years as a county mayor. And now I'm in my 5th year of Congress. But it's just, the stakes are higher, but the game is still the same.
How do these people have energy to do the sex scandals? Like, you know what I'm saying? The partying, the cheating. I mean, if all these allegations are true, and I suspect that they are for some of these lawmakers, I mean, I'm exhausted. Like, I can't be like, hey, get away from me, okay? I'm not interested in your games. Get away. Yeah. I want to go to bed.
Well,
without you.
One of our members agrees, and we love doing the show with the members, and you can get your comment read too. TYT.com/join to become a member. Dirge wrote in, you know how you don't end up blackmailed? Don't get naked.
Totally.
It's a good point. So I'll end on this point. So look, guys, some of their colleagues might be compromised, but also some of their donors might be compromised, and he alluded to that. And remember, Mitch McConnell and Democratic leadership all work for the donors. They're just servants of the super rich and of corporations. So if their bosses told them you are not to release those logs, then Democratic and Republican leadership are going to go and go, no, don't release it, don't release it. Our beloved blackmailers and bribers might be in jeopardy, and we are here to serve them. And then could it involve Republican politicians or politicians in both parties? Of course. Look, I said about Jeffrey Epstein's death, I said, I don't know if it's suicide or somebody killed him, but here's how we're gonna know if the videotape in the hallway worked or didn't work. And then we found out later, the videotape in that hallway magically didn't work that night. Okay, you put 2 and 2 together, most times you're gonna come out with 4. So who are the 2 biggest politicians that are associated with Jeffrey Epstein? Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Oh, right, the 2 biggest guys in the 2 parties. Donald Trump said that he used to party with Jeffrey Epstein all the time, that he was a terrific guy. And he said, and he likes him young. So he knew the whole time. I mean, that buffoon admitted it publicly, but what do they know that isn't public?
Well, when we come back from the break, we will not be talking about this story. We're gonna move on to other things, including the continued witch hunt on Harvard president Claudine Gay. Wait till you get a load of how Congress wants to get involved this time. We'll be right back.
So you're in the motel room naked.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now, these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this. You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing. I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Jank. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, aka Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
And this is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier, and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. When educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power, it makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America.
Listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
Can't fight fire with water. You gotta fight fire with fire.
Can't fight fire with water?
Yeah, depends on what's in the fire. Yeah.
Let's see how Earth responds to that.
TYT, Cenk Anna, Jacob Ramirez, Sarah Sawyer, and Eli Farsek. You guys are amazing. Thank you for joining. You see anything good that we're saying? Well, you made that happen because without the members, there is no Young Turks. So thank you. We appreciate you. Anna.
Let's get right to our next story, which is infuriating to say the least and shows the uselessness of our current Congress. So we are currently dealing with a workforce that in many cases works full-time but still can't afford housing. We're also dealing with a situation in which a huge percentage of school-age children, even as old as the 4th grade, are having trouble reading. But have no fear, because the House Education and Workforce Committee is not focusing on that at all. Instead, they want to hold a hearing to continue investigating Harvard University President Claudine Gay and the allegations that she plagiarized her published work. Now, just as a reminder, Harvard is a private institution. It is not a public university that takes the public taxpayer money that public institutions do. And you should also keep in mind that an investigation has been conducted by a third party into the plagiarism allegations, and Harvard University stands behind her 100%. Nonetheless, let's talk about what Congress wants to do here. Now, in a letter this week on Wednesday, acquired by Bloomberg, Republican Congresswoman Virginia Foxx said that the committee, again, the Education and Workforce Committee in the House, will expand its look into Claudine Gay, focusing on whether Harvard holds its faculty to the same academic standards as its students. This is not what Congress is meant to do. This is, for lack of a better way to describe it, this isn't their jurisdiction, okay? This is all theater, all theater. That's all this is. The House Committee on Education and the Workforce is requesting that Harvard hand over all documentation and communications concerning the initial allegations of plagiarism, the school's responses to the media, as well as a list of disciplinary actions taken against Harvard faculty or students for academic integrity violations since 2019. As the Wall Street Journal reports, the representative here, Republican Representative Virginia Foxx, sent a letter to Penny Pritzker, who leads the school's governing board, with quotes from the school's honor code, which says that plagiarizing or misrepresenting the ideas or language of someone else as one's own, falsifying data, or any other instance of academic dishonesty violates the standards of our community. Now, it's fascinating that they're wasting time doing something that they are not supposed to do as a House committee. This is not, honestly, none of their business. And this is something that should be and has been investigated by Harvard, again, a private Ivy League school. And if this is the precedent that they want to set, are they going to start interrogating administrators at Brigham Young University to ensure that none of them engaged in any premarital sex? Because I do know that students at that university end up getting kicked out if there's any evidence that they engaged in premarital sex. So we got to make sure the administrators are being held to the exact same standard as the students, right? Even if it's a private institution, even if there's, an independent investigation to the allegations and it's proven to be untrue. This is insane.
Yeah, so there's 4 giant problems here. Number one, they're obviously doing character assassination of her. What happens is when someone says something that some lobbyists don't like or people in power don't like, they now attack their characters, because if you do that, it smears their cause as well as them. It's a far more effective way of trying to ruin someone. And when they do that, they dig and dig and dig until they get the juiciest stuff. And there's almost always something on somebody, right? Oh, you did this back in 97 and you left out a comma in 2017, et cetera. In this case, I've got to congratulate the president of Harvard, because she's apparently led the most immaculate life. What they found was 4 incomplete citations. Ooh, she must be a saint. So look, if you say, hey, no, Cenk, I read the Harvard Crimson and it actually has other things, et cetera. As Anna pointed out, that's for Harvard to adjudicate, and Harvard has already cleared her. So what we're having congressional hearings because we think the Harvard, whichever body at Harvard does that adjudication didn't do its job. Why? Our taxpayer money is going to this? Let them figure it out if there's an issue. That's not our job. Theater.
Yeah, no, Cenk. This is the illusion of governance. Bingo. The illusion of governance. These are lawmakers who are useless, who have no interest in actually, we have a migrant crisis as we speak, a migrant crisis that they like to campaign on, a migrant crisis that they pretend to be so concerned about, yet they fail to even consider immigration reform. Instead, they're engaging in hearing after hearing that's meant to do nothing more than get their names in headlines and give the illusion of governance. And I have the facts to prove it, because every Congress, there's an analysis done to see just how productive members of Congress have been in that session. And boy, is the analysis absolutely devastating for the current Congress. So I want to get to those numbers before we circle back to Claudine Gay and the allegations of plagiarism, because to me, the big issue here, whether you believe the plagiarism allegations or not, put that aside for a second. You have to at least acknowledge that this is not the job of Congress, and they are using our resources to call on these hearings that really have no place for Congress, but more importantly, takes time and resources away from what they should be doing. They should be doing their jobs. There are so many problems in this country, and they like to, again, campaign on it, pretend like they're concerned about it, but they never do a damn thing about any of these issues. So amid insanely low approval ratings, Congress has again decided to waste time with politically charged investigations and hearings, and they're doing nothing for the American people. Axios published a recent piece titled "Capitol Hill Stunner: 2023 led to fewest laws in decades." So the data analytics firm known as Quorum, they do a review every year, and their review of the 2023 year looked at the 118th Congress, and they found that it is the most unproductive in modern history. And keep in mind that this year there was even a 3-week period in which the House of Representatives didn't do a damn thing because they were instead engaging in a pathetic power struggle for Speaker of the House. Now, take a look at this graphic, which was provided by Axios using the data from Quorum. They found that just 20 bills have been passed by both chambers and signed into law this year, with another 4 currently awaiting Biden's signature. And that's actually far below even historically unproductive first years. So the 104th, 112th, and 113th Congresses, in which Republicans controlled one or both chambers with Democrats, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama in the White House, passed between 70 and 73 laws. And 5 of the 6 most unproductive first years of a congressional session have been since 2011. So things have really eroded in recent years, which honestly helps to bolster the reasons why Americans think so poorly of our Congress. And by the way, you might be wondering, okay, well, what laws did they manage to pass? Well, the vast majority were uncontroversial bills that passed either by unanimous consent or with minimal opposition, including multiple measures to rename Veterans Affairs clinics and another to mint a coin commemorating the 250th anniversary of the Marine Corps.
Wow.
The other main class, I know, it's amazing. The other main class of legislation that Congress passed this year were must-pass bills raising the debt ceiling and keeping the government funded. But that's it. Just absolutely pathetic, absolutely pathetic.
Yeah, so I mentioned the first reason why this is ridiculous is just obviously a character assassination of this president of Harvard, plus it's a weapon of mass distraction, which leads me to point number 2. Where's the congressional hearings on the actual genocide? The one that's happening in Gaza, the one that killed 20,000 people in Gaza, 6,400 women, 8,000 children killed, massacred, actual genocide. Not chants about a genocide, but one that's going on right now. No hearings, none, 0. Because God forbid you should do something productive and real when you could just distract the American people instead. Number 3, wait, I thought the Republicans were for free speech and they hated cancel culture. Now all of a sudden they're like, oh, people are chanting things we don't like. We should fire the president because she didn't condemn them enough, because I hate free speech. I hate it. When someone says something that I don't like, ban them, fire them, expel them. And what happened to cancel culture? I thought you guys hated cancel culture. Fire her, fire her. They're having congressional hearings to fire her. They're running a witch hunt here. And again, that's the other irony. Trump talking about witch hunts. This is what a witch hunt looks like. Where she hasn't done anything wrong, but she dared to not condemn a chant as much as you wanted her to. Meanwhile, the actual genocide's right there, right? And then the 4th point is the one that Anna just made. Are you guys ever gonna pass a real bill? What are we gonna call Veterans Affairs? Is this a joke? It is, it's a joke. And look, it's both sides. But yes, the Republicans are in charge of the House, and they're not even trying. And the Democrats aren't putting any pressure on them to try. Yeah, they make fun of them when they have their melee about the speaker vote, etc. But is there anyone on the Democratic side going, hey guys, are we gonna do immigration reform? Are we gonna do paid family leave? Are we gonna do higher minimum wage? Make an argument, compel them, force them, pressure them. No, nothing. So I'm already mad enough at the Democratic side for doing nothing and not really fighting back. But Republicans, so you never even intended to do anything. I mean, you say, Anna's 100% right. Oh, immigration, it's a crisis, it's terrible, we're being replaced, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so where's your bill? They're not even proposing a bill. Forget compromising with the Democrats on a bill. They haven't even proposed one. They don't care. You know, there's one thing they proposed. That was to cut the IRS agents that were auditing the rich. You remember that? Right in the beginning, that was the first thing they did, and it turns out the only thing they did. Because their job is to protect the rich and distract you with everything else. So as we think, what a mess, ineffective bunch of losers, they're thinking, no, you're not getting it. Mission accomplished. We protected the rich and did nothing else.
And look, I want to be fair and accurate and just say that under the new House Speaker, Mike Johnson, who is in the far right wing of the Republican Party, they did propose, I should say, a bill in the House regarding immigration. But it was a bill that was more meant to virtue signal to their constituents about how extreme they can be on the topic of immigration, knowing full well that it would be dead on arrival in the Senate. So it's not really about passing real immigration reform that has a chance. It's not about negotiating with the other side of the aisle and with the more moderate Republicans to come up with the right solutions. It's really just about theater. Even with the legislation they propose, it ends up being all about virtue signaling, all about theater, and less about actually finding solutions to the issues that the country is facing as we speak.
Yeah, so Anna, thank you for that correction. And I'm really glad you said that. So they did introduce one. Guys, if you actually wanted to stop things at the border, you really cared about it. Here's what I would do. After introducing a bill, whether it was for theater or not, I would then go to the Democrats and go, okay, we need this to pass because I'm really worried. They're crossing the border every day and more of them are crossing. I'm so worried about it. So what do we need to do to pass this bill so we can stop them from crossing the border? Okay, Democrats, let's negotiate. No, I'm not gonna give you that. I might give you that. I mean, I'd be animated, right? If I was in Congress right now, I'd be pushing for paid family leave. But I'd actually want it to pass. So I'd say to the Republicans, look, 74% of your voters want it. So what do you need? So how do we make this deal happen? Do you see any of that energy?
Nope.
Nothing. Because they're not actually trying to pass anything. It's, as Anna has said now many times, and she's absolutely right. It's nothing but theater just to distract you and make sure you don't realize that they aren't actually trying to help you at all.
When we come back from the break, we'll give you an update on Rudy Giuliani's latest legal woes. He has officially filed for bankruptcy. Is he doing it to skirt his legal liabilities? Well, we'll get to that and more when we come back.
There was a big dump. I put out the big dump.
Couple of reminders. First of all, we're trying to get to 6,000 members extra by the end of the month. And it looks like we're gonna need a little bit of a Christmas miracle here. We're around 3,900. But I believe in you guys and I believe in us. And we wouldn't ask if we didn't need it. So we appreciate all of you that join up. You could do it through YouTube, the join button below, or you could do it at tyt.com/join, which is honestly, that's much better. They're both great. We'll take it. We love you for it. But if you can go to tyt.com/join, that's great. All right. And don't forget, we're doing Turks and Jerks next week on the 28th. Okay. So right after the main show, we'll tell you the worst person of the year, and a lot of competitors there, and the best person. Okay. Tatted Repress writes in on YouTube Super Chat and Corruption Now. Cenk, please give Wolfpack website. Yes. wolf-pac.com. They're the only ones trying to actually end corruption, get money out of politics, end corporate personhood. Corporations are not people, my friend, no matter how much you like National Hot Dog Day. Wolf-pac.com. Kina, my heart burns with anger and sadness for Palestinians. Trump or Biden, who do you vote for to stop this? They both fund Israel. Both parties are just different legs of the same poison spider. You know, the Republicans call it the uniparty, and that's true. That's what we call corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans, and that's 90% of Congress at least. But they don't realize that Donald Trump is part of the uniparty. He did what the right-wing government of Israel wants more than any other president did. He bowed his head. You know why? His largest donor was Sheldon Adelson, and one of his demands was do whatever the right-wing government of Israel tells you to. Just keeping it real, okay? That's just the reality. You can look it up. It's in my book. It's documented, fact-checked 8 times over. Sheldon Adelson gave $100 million 2 different times to Donald Trump through PACs and independent expenditures, and Trump gave him everything he wanted. So we've got open bribery and open auctions in Congress and in the White House. Benjamin Morrow writes in, I'm so proud that you're all sticking on Gaza and will not let it go. It warms my heart, although I weep while driving home. So much love to you both. Thank you, Benjamin. Lars Nilsson writes in, the right wing's beloved weapon, the AR-15, has been used in another school shooting, this time in Prague. At least 15 dead and around 10 seriously injured. Is this another cultural import from the US? Actually, it is. That Vivek Ramaswamy is talking about how we have to get assault weapons into all houses in Taiwan. No, they reject it. That's why they have such few murders and suicides in Taiwan, is because people don't have guns. But we're trying to spread this poison all across the world. Ismail Lamy writes in, the IDF is either one of the most incompetent armed forces in the world, being one of the supposed top ones and being backed by the best, or what it's doing is deliberate. In both cases, they need to be held accountable. That's the point I've been making, Ismail, for so long. Are they the worst army? They miss all the time. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Gigi, Montana Ruby, Arabella Norwood, all amazing people that just joined, became part of the Young Turks, and Jennifer Hackett, speaking of awesome people, upgraded to executive producer. Jennifer, thank you. Again, giant difference, makes all the difference. And last one, Progressive Boomer gifted 5 Young Turks memberships. We appreciate that. You can do a gift through YouTube, or you can go to tyt.com/gift and give the gift of honest reporting and a little bit of hope in the world for Christmas. All right, Anna.
Well, we've got some updates on Rudy Giuliani, his finances and legal woes. Let's get to it.
Rudy Giuliani filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in New York. He's listing debts of up to $500 million, assets of up to just $10 million.
I thought it was go woke, go broke, but apparently it's go joke and go broke. Rudy Giuliani has filed for bankruptcy after a jury in Washington ordered him to pay a whopping $148 million in damages to 2 Fulton County, Georgia election workers whom he defamed following the 2020 presidential election. Now, oftentimes, when we hear of public figures or corporations filing for bankruptcy, it's an effort to hide assets and avoid paying the legal liabilities that they've been told to pay. But in this case, I actually do think that Rudy Giuliani has squandered the incredible wealth he had built for himself as a successful lawyer. So let's get to the details. The bankruptcy filing in New York came after a court order that Giuliani must immediately pay $146 million of what he owes to the former election workers, Ruby Freeman and Wandrea Shea Moss. Now, the filing shows that in addition to the Freeman and Moss judgment, Giuliani also owes quite a bit in taxes, a whopping $1 million in federal and state taxes. Now, he also owes millions of dollars in unpaid legal fees as well, something that we've shared on the show in previous stories. Now, just quickly going back to the judgment in the defamation case, I mentioned that he was ordered to pay $148 million in damages, but that he was later ordered to immediately pay $146 million. That's because the judge had reduced the verdict by about $2 million to reflect the damages the pair were paid in a settlement last year with the other defendant in the case, the TV network OAN, okay? So with that said, a spokesperson for Rudy Giuliani says that the former mayor's bankruptcy filings should not really come as a surprise to anyone, and he might really be right about that because we've been hearing about Giuliani's financial problems for quite some time now. Ted Goodman, who is his spokesperson, says no person could have reasonably believed that Mayor Rudy Giuliani would be able to pay such a high punitive amount. Chapter 11 will afford Mayor Giuliani the opportunity and time to pursue an appeal while providing transparency for his finances under the supervision of bankruptcy court to ensure all creditors are treated equally and fairly throughout the process. But what's also really interesting is if he thinks that he can easily skirt the damages he is ordered to pay the 2 election workers he defamed, he's got another thing coming. So let's go to the next video and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Here's the thing about this $148 million judgment. It is likely not dischargeable in bankruptcy because it resulted from willful and malicious acts, which are not subject to bankruptcy protection. So whatever happens with this reorganization and the bankruptcy, this judgment will stay with him for the rest of his life. Now he can appeal it, but the judge, in imposing the judgment yesterday, made clear that in order to appeal, he's going to have to put up a bond, essentially equivalent to the amount, to the $148 million, which clearly he does not have. So an appeal seems rather remote at this point.
Now, Freeman and Moss had a feeling that he was going to file for bankruptcy and try to avoid paying what he has been ordered to pay. And so they successfully got the judge involved in doing something about that concern. And that's what was referred to in the video you just watched. The judge who presided over Freeman and Moss's defamation case lifted a 30-day pause on the judgment on Wednesday after the mother and daughter said that they were concerned that he tried to hide his assets. So the judge said, quote, Giuliani's failure to satisfy even more modest monetary awards entered earlier in this case provides good cause to believe that he will seek to dissipate or conceal his assets during the 30-day period. US District Judge Beryl Howell wrote in her order, the decision allowed Freeman and Moss to go after Giuliani's assets in New York and Florida. And as you all know, we've also shared in the past that Giuliani has had his New York City apartment on the market for quite some time now. He's trying to sell it for $6 million, but he's having a difficult time selling it. So I believe those are some of the assets that they're referring to in this decision. Cenk.
Yeah, so we were led to believe that Giuliani didn't have anything left. Oh, all of a sudden, it turns out you got $10 million in assets. All right, well, they'll take that. And they talked about how they're gonna go for his houses in Florida and New York. Yeah, they're owed that money, and that's how it works. So I'm a little surprised that he can't appeal because of the rule that that expert just explained. I'm not sure that I think that that's a good idea, but whether I think it's a good idea or not, apparently he can't appeal. So he's toast. I mean, he can't discharge it and he can't appeal. Yeah, that's an albatross around his neck for the rest of his life. And so they've got some protections in bankruptcy, and you might be able to keep one of your houses, etc. OJ got away with keeping some stuff, but yeah, this is going to, at a bare minimum, haunt him. He's not going to be able to accumulate any money anymore, and so this is what happens. And that gets to the most important point, which is, you know, a lot of us looked at these guys telling outrageous lies about how they had all this evidence that the election was stolen by Hugo Chavez or a Kraken or a mule or something along those lines. And we all thought, like, are they just gonna get away with this? These are outrageous lies. Not anywhere near true, and they're saying it all over TV. And it did, it tricked like 40% of the country, and to this day, into thinking that the election was stolen. Well, it turns out there are consequences. And just that little bit of justice, to me, goes a long, long way. I'm
Agreed.
Thrilled at the result here. So it turns out, no, you can't just lie on TV. No, you can't just smear people and get away with it. These are gonna be the consequences. So Republicans or whoever you are out there, you wanna smear people and you wanna defame them and you wanna lie about them and you wanna spread outrageous lies for political reasons, well, look around your house and see if you like the house and the things in it, because one day somebody's gonna come take that from you for all the damage that you have done this country.
Exactly. And Cenk, I hear you about the decision by the judge to make it incredibly difficult for him to appeal the decision. But I also want to just remind everyone that immediately after he was ordered to pay that insanely high amount in damages, he then went on to Newsmax and proceeded to continue defaming the two election workers. And so they filed a second defamation lawsuit against him. They're not asking for any damages. They're just trying to get him to shut up. But he's his own worst enemy. He's just like Trump. They're two peas in a pod. So he's gonna continue getting himself into trouble, even as he's facing, all of this financial harm as a result.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, just last quick thing here. And this is what happens to everyone who trusts Trump. You thought that he was going to take care of you, Rudy? No, he didn't pay your legal bills. He didn't do anything for you, and he just ruined your life. And is he coming back around to help you now? No, of course not, because that's who Donald Trump is. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. So just keep staying in his corner, see how it turns out for you, because based on now the criminal trials are next. So forget being bankrupt. He might be going to jail soon.
All right, let's go to our next story because this one is so outrageous, it's honestly hard to believe. But imagine someone crashing into your business and then you get arrested for it. And that's what happened in St. Louis. It's just that the person who did the crashing was a cop. So a St. Louis patrol car drove right into the side of a gay bar late Sunday night. But the police proceeded to arrest the owner of that bar over an alleged altercation they have absolutely no proof of. So let's get to the details of what allegedly happened. So Chad Morris and James Pence, the married couple who co-own the gay bar in question, Bar PM, and live above it, said that they came downstairs after they heard this loud crash at 12:30 in the morning. So it was Monday morning, late Sunday night, depending on how you like to look at it. And so James Pence told the press, quote, I was actually already in bed and I heard a loud boom. I jumped up thinking it was an accident with a vehicle, and then I saw it and it was a St. Louis City Police Department vehicle in the front of our building. So we do have some security camera footage of the crash. Let's take a quick look at that. All right, so you can see it, you see the car, obviously driving incredibly quickly, and there you see it crash into a building. And so that is the surveillance showing you the crash as it happened. Now, after that, the incident report says that an offender came outside and began shouting obscenities at police officers after the crash, but it does not name the offender. In a video taken by a witness, one of the responding officers asks Pence for proof of ID. Show me your ID. At that point, Pence responds to the police officer saying, quote, you're not IDing me, Pence says in the video. I've done nothing wrong. Shortly after, he yells that the officers cannot card him. The officer tells Pence not to yell, later adding, quote, you're not going to cause a disturbance, to which Pence responds, I'm not causing a disturbance. And then Pence was handcuffed. He was handcuffed after that. So the incident report states that when one of the officers attempted to calm the situation, Chad Morris shoved John Pierce, who was one of the cops on the scene. The officer accused Morris of striking him hard in the chest with an open hand, causing the officer to lose his balance, according to the probable cause statement. He also claimed that Morris attempted to flee toward the alleyway near the bar. A 22-minute witness video, though, does not show Morris making any physical contact with any officer before entering the alleyway near the bar. Also, what happened in the alleyway itself wasn't visible in the video, so there's some stuff we don't see. But when Morris walks back through the gate of the alleyway, he is in handcuffs with an injury. He has an injury in his eye and ripped clothing. So Morris was arrested for allegedly assaulting an officer and resisting arrest and jailed for about 30 hours before being released. Now, the charge was later downgraded from a felony to a misdemeanor, but Morris's lawyer is saying that he never struck any officer, but rather an officer who was wearing a beanie hat was actually the one who beat him. So he also released a photo of him taken on Tuesday shows that his left eye is bruised and swollen. Okay, so the story gets crazier if you can believe it. As for why the cops ran into the building in the first place, they have changed their story multiple times. So for instance, according to local reporting, initially the officer at the scene told Pence that Morris, so the two co-owners of the bar and the couple, that he'd been avoiding a dog in the middle of the street. Then the dog turned into a parked car that the officer said he had to swerve to avoid. And so I guess he allegedly swerves into the building to avoid the car. The incident report, though, from the St. Louis Police Department says an officer was driving too close to a parked car and then overcorrected and lost control of the vehicle. Okay, so which one is it? But then at a briefing yesterday, Lieutenant Colonel Renee Kreisman said that the officer driving the cruiser admits to getting distracted while attempting to change his in-car radio. So yet again, the story changes. And final thing, Cenk. So footage captures the same patrol car also running a red light just moments before it crashes. So that's what we're looking at as we speak. There it is, running the red light, showing erratic driving, showing that, look, there could be a possibility that the police officer was under the influence. The problem is we won't know because the officers involved were not given a toxicology test. Now, the mayor of St. Louis says the incident is under investigation, and James Pence reflected on what happened, saying the following: "I feel like the situation has been handled horribly all the way around. All they needed to do was take responsibility, admit they had an accident, and handle it differently." Cenk.
Yeah, so when they first crashed into the gay bar, I thought you could have knocked. But then it got crazier and crazier. So they said, oh, we arrested him for causing a disturbance. Already I know the entire thing is BS at that point. Because after resisting arrest, causing a disturbance is the second biggest BS charge the cops use when they want to assault someone and pretend that they were the ones that started it, okay? Then you look at the video and they're like, oh, the guy pushed me, shoved me in the chest, I lost my balance, okay? I thought, oh, so you were drunk. And there's no way that he actually pushed you. You look at the videotape, no one pushes him. So I don't know if he was drunk. That's usually how drunk people drive, okay? And when someone asks you, comes out innocently, the owner, I mean, cops are supposed to protect property, right? That's like their number one job as in this capitalist structure, right? And the owner comes out and goes, hey, what happened? And all of a sudden you get super defensive. Okay, I mean, these all telltale signs of the cops totally lying and totally saying things to cover up for the original problems that they caused. But then the kicker though, the best one was the one that Anna mentioned about why he did the swerving in the first place. Oh, a dog came out and I was trying to protect it. You saw the tape, there's no dog. I mean, you have to remember, until smartphones and all that technology came out fairly recently, that we started seeing the cops' lies with our own eyes. For my whole life, when I grew up in America, the media always said that the cops were always telling the truth. And when cops went to testify, it was like, oh, if the cop is saying it. Defendant, we never believe the defendant, but if the cop is saying it, then it must be true. Look, to the point where, look, I think OJ did it, right? But I now understand why the jury acquitted him way better than I did back then. Because in their experience, the cops lie all the time. You can't trust anything a cop says. And so is that true for all cops? Of course not, right? But a lot of them, so many of them, that when I see certain words in a report, I know which direction it's gonna go. I know the lies that they make up, and I can tell you ahead of time what they're gonna say and what's gonna be true and untrue. So of course there was no dog, and those guys didn't go out and randomly assault the cops. They were just trying to cover their tracks. So it's totally outrageous. And I love that we now have cameras that could show us what the reality is and catch these cops who apparently have been lying for, well, as long as there's been cops.
When we come back from the break, we will dissect allegations by one of the least attractive members of Congress, and that's saying something, Ted Cruz, alleging that liberal men don't know how to sexually please and satisfy their women. I will debunk that. We will be back.
Don't forget that you can give the gift of TYT this Christmas, tyt.com/gift. We do really need to get 6,000 new members, and that's a great way of doing it. So we appreciate anybody who does that. All right, now let's go to our heroic members. Kami Poison Blood Vermin, hilarious handle, says that kid, referring to the Israeli kid who's denying the IDF and saying he's not going to sign up and is going to go to military prison. He said, that kid made me burst out in tears, remembering my young Quaker friends who did the exact same thing and went to jail during the Vietnam War. That was incredible courage by that Israeli kid, and the whole world appreciates it. Genocide Joe wrote in, and that's his handle. I find it so weird that people are amazed that Palestinian, Syrian, and Lebanese Christians exist. Where did you think Christianity came from? Alabama? Okay, I'm afraid to ask, so we'll leave that one alone. Mechanic 66 says J. Edgar Hoover is infamous for all the dirt he had on everybody that was anybody, and also for dressing in women's clothing. That's also true. That's some old school blackmail that the government used to do through the FBI. Iqbal wrote in very long, so I'm going to read just 2 parts of it here, saying just donated through tyt.com ActBlue link beyond my membership. Don't have much savings or a job, but I am grateful to TYT for being so vital to my life. And he talks about how he's gaslit by institutions and we've helped to keep him sane. And a lot of people write that, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Makes me feel pretty good about what we do, even in the tough days. And he ended by saying, much love to my touchstones, Jenk and Anna, as well as Franny, Wozni, Ravana, Brett, and John, who's birthed a future sci-fi fan. You're all such courageously authentic people and encourage me to fight. Merry Christmas to the people who often provide more solace than my real family. Wow. Well, we appreciate you, Iqbal. Thank you so much, and hang in there. Stiff Upper Lib wrote in, the point where some hottie is hitting on you is the point where you say, oh hell, I'm being trapped. The fact that no hottie ever hit on you before and now it happens was not a wake-up call? Did you not see that coming? Dumb Fs, all of them, referring to the politicians falling for the honeypot traps. There's a lot of truth to that, man. When all of a sudden some incredibly attractive woman starts hitting on you, you might want to think about why that happened, okay? Anyway, Metal Turtle 571 gifted one more sub to get to 400 gifted on Twitch. It's amazing. Navi Nabo 5 writes in about the same honeypot story. This is how they got Fetterman to flip. JK, LOL. I think it's JK. Mind Grifter says, first he came after my hot dogs and I said nothing. That's funny. C Madrid 80 says, rich people can owe millions of dollars for crap. I'm a week late on my electric bill and they're sending me a disconnect notice. Oh my God, that's so true too. And Tech Nauseated says, you all think Trump will let him stay on Mar-a-Lago couch?
God bless you. Shut up, fool.
Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Jason Tankersley, which is an awesome name, and love either Sammer or Samurai. Either way, also an awesome name. Thank you guys for being part of TYT. We appreciate you. Everybody, we would love to get to 6,000 new members. We do need it. So if you can hit the join button below, or even better, go to tyt.com/join. That would be fantastic, and we appreciate you. Anna.
This story is a doozy. I've been looking forward to talking about it all day, so let's get right to it. It turns out that despite clear evidence, Senator Ted Cruz believes that he is attractive. He's also under this weird assumption that he would have the ability to sexually please women. And he also thinks that men on the left are incapable of satisfying women. So with that said, let's talk about Cruz's statements at the so-called America Fest held by Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA. Here's what he had to say about the political identification of the angriest people and allegedly the individuals who could please the least in bed. Let's watch.
Left is so bad. They're so unhappy. They're so pissed off. And by the way, if you were a liberal woman and you had to sleep with those weenies, you'd be pissed too.
Have you seen yourself in the mirror at all? By the way, I just love how he's like, liberal women are so angry, as he's like screaming at the top of his lungs. And look, I do think that if you are an ideologue, if you are super tribal in your politics and you believe everything coming out from one party or the other, you're gonna be either living in fear or you're gonna be constantly angry. I don't think that this is a liberal or conservative thing. I think this is a both parties thing. I think this is an ideologue thing because both parties sell fear, they scaremonger. And they make you think the world around you is much scarier and a lot worse than it really is. And they basically condition their constituents to fear the other side and avoid engaging in conversation with them. And yeah, if you have that worldview, you're much more likely to be an unhappy person. But with that said, he's smoking if he thinks that he is the arbiter of what would be pleasing to women. Cenk.
Yeah. Look, I don't think either side should get into this nonsense about, oh yeah, women want to sleep with us more. That's not a thing that a politician should be talking about.
No.
Yeah, and especially a politician that looks like Ted Cruz. And yeah, if you're gonna make fun of how we are, we're definitely gonna make fun of how you actually are, okay? And look, brother, you didn't even defend your wife when Trump called her ugly. So you're as beta as it gets.
Let's get into that, Cenk. Let's get into that, okay? Because again, he's trying to make it appear as though like conservative men like him are definitely better partners. They know how to pleasure their women. But again, in 2016, when Ted Cruz was running against Donald Trump in the GOP primary, Trump definitely hit below the belt and tweeted the following. So he says, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and it shows a split screen of Ted Cruz's wife on the left-hand side and then Melania Trump on the right-hand side. And so he's essentially calling Ted Cruz's wife ugly. I thought it was a horrible tweet. I hate stuff like this. And even after Trump had called his wife ugly, and also, by the way, this is a side note, accused Ted Cruz's father of being involved in JFK's assassination, Cruz tucked tail and did this.
Hi, this is Ted Cruz calling. I was calling to encourage you to come out and vote on election day. Just wanted to encourage you to come out and vote. Thank you, and God bless you.
There he is phone banking for Donald Trump, the very guy who said horrible things about his wife and father. And then Chris Cuomo had this wonderful moment with Ted Cruz during an interview. Let's take a look at that.
Why don't you talk to the president the way you talk to my brother, Ted? You afraid of him? You think he'll smack you down at home?
Oh,
is that
yeah,
what it is?
I'm
Like he's shutting you up in the primary?
Cuomos. You guys
not
are
the
really
Cuomos.
tough.
I'm talking about the president. My brother's not the president. I'm talking about the president, the one who called you a liar, the one who said your wife was ugly. That guy, you know, the guy now who you won't say anything about.
Bad. That's bad. It's real bad. You should not be talking about this kind of stuff on stage, Ted. You shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, Cuomo got after it there. I like it. All right, now let's have fun and compare Ted Cruz to progressive men and see how he fares.
To be fair, I don't know how progressive some of these guys are, but if I had to choose.
But they're all on the left, unquestionably.
Yes, they're all on the left, exactly. So look, I don't care what Leonardo DiCaprio's politics are. And I don't care if he only likes younger women and thinks that I'm an old hag. I'd get after that. If I were single, of course, I love my husband. But come on, are we having a conversation here?
Leo's definitely on the left. He's massively in favor of fighting climate change. Like, he's a classic Hollywood liberal. Okay, who's winning that one, Ted? Okay, and yeah, I mean, you pick Trump, pick any of your, Mitch McConnell. Okay, oh yeah, you guys are all stunners. Yeah, good luck, right wing. I remember when there were rumors that Ricky Martin was gay, and it turns out those rumors were true. But his lawyer had a great line where he said, "Well, if you think he is, why don't you let him stay 5 minutes in a room with your wife and see how it turns out?" Right? So Ted Cruz, I'd flip that now and say, hey, if you think that guys on the left are not going to be that attractive to women, why don't you let them stay in the room with your wife for 5 minutes, see how it turns out? Any one of these guys is not going to work out well for you, especially after you didn't defend her at all.
You also have people like George Clooney, older gentleman.
Now he's
still get it.
They both have salt and pepper beards. One has worked out better than the other.
Don't compare the two. That's so insulting to Clooney. You've got Chris Evans, another person on the left. I love the comparisons. It's fantastic. I wasn't familiar with this gentleman, Shemar Moore, but yes, please. Yes, please. This is my favorite story ever. Okay. And then look, we're showing you a bunch of celebrities. Okay, it's really inappropriate to compare members of Congress to celebrities because celebrities have been Hollywoodized, right? They're beautiful, they've got the veneers, maybe they've had a little bit of work done. I'm not saying these guys have, but they have a certain look to them. So let's go to the average Joe, including my husband. Yeah, I know you guys hate hearing about my husband and how hot I think he is, and I know that we don't have children, but in regard to the whole pleasing his woman, we definitely try for the kids on a regular basis.
Oh, geez.
Not really.
Look, there's no way that a right winger was going to insult the looks of the left, and Anna wasn't going to show you a picture of her husband. That's never happened in any story we've ever done on the topic. But I believe there's someone else in your household who's also better looking than Ted Cruz. So let's take a look.
Better looking makes the world a lot better. Sweet little boy. He's a sweet little boy. He's my little prince. Oh, so there's a lot of great things happening with men on the left. But again, look, I think that these kinds of conversations are so ridiculous, right? People are people, okay? I'm sure there are lots of super hot guys on the right who know how to put some motion in the ocean, whatever. It's ridiculous to like be on a stage as a sitting member of the Senate and make comments like this. Just so dumb, and he thinks it's a big gotcha, but all it does is it directs attention to you, how you look, and how horrible you've been as a husband to your wife after a big public figure in the middle of an election called her ugly. To me, there's no honor in what Ted Cruz did in refusing to defend his wife. That was disgusting.
And by the way, it didn't work either. I mean, it worked that he got to stay in the Senate and got to keep his status and his title. and still gets to go on TV, etc. And I guess that's the kind of pathetic man that he is, that he thinks that's good enough. But he thought he was going to, if he kissed Trump's ass enough after Trump insulted his wife and father, that he could position himself to be the next Republican leader after Trump. No, you don't get to be an alpha after you've humiliated yourself and your family, after you debased yourself serving another man. You don't get to talk about serving women and how you're going to be the next leader. That's not how it works. So, but hey, yeah. I encourage him to talk about other people's looks all the time so we can do more stories like this.
Agreed. And final thing I'll say is leaders lead. Okay, leaders lead. Leaders don't follow. Leaders don't tuck tail and suck up to people who have wronged them. That's different from forgiveness and moving on. What Ted Cruz did was engage in a quest for his own power and threw his own family members under the bus in the process of doing so. He is the definition of the type of man that would have difficulty pleasing any woman.
Yes. Now, in the bonus episode for the members, we're going to talk about purity balls, which already sounds hilarious, okay? But it means like balls as in dances you go to, still funny. And it's conservative men who take their 13-year-old daughters to the ball and dance with them. And then what else do they do? And get a load of this. There's a twist in the story where I'm going to partially defend it. Interesting. TYT.com/join to become a member, or you can hit the join button on YouTube. And members make this show possible. Every time you hear us covering the news honestly or saying something you agree with, you did that. And we appreciate you for it. TYT is a family, and we do this together. Okay. I have 1 minute left, so Anna, if you'll indulge me, I read 2 more comments.
I mean, this is your dream, Cenk, so go ahead. Start scrolling.
Merry Christmas to me. Okay, Early Bird 42 writes in, Cruz only thinks he's hot stuff because he's fallen for far too many of those honeypots. See, they're funny. I love how funny our members are. Okay. Oh, I feel sick for the woman who has to play the honeypot in that one. Anyway, or whoever. Trisha Briggs writes in and super chat, Cenk, as always, just want to thank you. Your answer like an outlet for me. It's honestly therapeutic. You and Anna both are so appreciated. And Trisha, look, I read your comments all the time and you're amazing and I appreciate all of you guys. We do this together, we're a family, so I appreciate you guys. So we've got a bonus episode for the members and we've got a show tomorrow, but happy holidays, everyone. We'll see you in a sec.